So, welcome, friends. Today is episode 15, and what we're going to be doing, Lou and I, is talking about symbolism in the Hindu religion. This episode is dedicated to my friends who requested this, Varinder Bhalla and his wife Ratna Bhalla, both of whom own this company called Bollywood Insider, which is available on the internet. Fascinating magazine, which comes out every month, talks about Bollywood. Very, very popular. And Varinder and Ratna have been ardent followers of me since I was doing a radio program at RBC Radio many, many, many years ago.
Wow.
And yeah, they've asked me for this particular session, so I'm going to be dedicating this to them. Um, Now, there's a few things that we need to talk about here. Um, Lou and I together did 216 episodes called Arise Arjuna, the Gita. Now, if you go back to that, it'll tell you very clearly what the religion actually is. And the term Hindu or Hinduism came after the British colonized India. The religion actually, it's not a religion, but the concept,
It's a philosophy, right?
a philosophy,
yeah.
a way of life that was taught by the Vedas and the Gita and the Upanishads. So it wasn't the Hindu religion, but for today's listener, I think everybody recognizes this as the Hindu religion. So that's why we use the term Hindu religion in talking about it today.
And we'll be talking about gods too, which often gives it the appearance of a religion, but it's more philosophic than it is religious.
Absolutely. So in our 216 episodes, we've made it absolutely clear that the ancient producers of the Vedanta.
By the way, can I
The-
just say, huge
Please.
impact for me, that series on the Gita that we did, and even my son-in-law is into it and has dug through it and done a great job. And if anyone hasn't fallen across that, head to Facebook, Arise Arjuna, the Gita, and check it out. It'd be well worth your time.
Yeah, I think so. I think that it is a life-changing, as it was. It changed my life, and that's why I felt that I should present it to everybody else. But
Such an enhancement. I can concur with that. Such an enhancement, and if you look at it as a philosophy instead of focusing on the religion, just changes your frame of mind. It's really worthwhile. I would definitely recommend going through it.
Thank you, Lou. In those 216 episodes, we recognize that the scriptures talk of God as one entity, a reality, one alone. And now we know that what they're talking about is universal consciousness, that you have consciousness in you. That's why you're conscious and able to listen to me. I have consciousness in me, which is able to allow me to think and to present my ideas to you. All of that together, universal consciousness, which is considered God. But the common man, if you go to a common man in any country who is toiling in the farms, probably hasn't gone to school, if you start talking to him about any of these concepts, it may be harder for him or her to understand. So the sages, the munis, the rishis of the past thousands of years ago came up with symbols, rituals, festivals, ceremonies, celebrations, and produced many gods and many actual divisions, all of which were designed specifically for us to, throughout our day, keep God uppermost in our mind. Because that was the purpose of this, is to say, what is religion? Religion is to get back to oneself with a capital S. So religion is basically taken from two words Latin, meaning again, ligate, which means to tie. In surgery, when I was in medical school, we used to talk about ligation, ligate. Ligate means to tie. Religate means to tie up again, or religion comes from those two words, which means to tie you up again with what? Not with rope, but to tie you back up again with your own self with which you were born. But instead, you're going outwards towards the world, towards money, towards food, towards wealth, all kinds of different sensual objects instead of going back towards yourself. So,
It's about
what
attenuating your focus, is it not?
changing your focus
Yeah.
and sharpening it, attenuating it, so that you're focusing it on yourself. So it comes up with all of these different rituals, festivals, and all gods. And we could spend a lifetime going over each one of these. But today, at the request of Varinder and Ratna Bhalla, they asked for a little talk on the Ramayana. Now, the Ramayana is one of the scriptures of Hindu religion, one of the older ones, which is a story. That story is so long that you can take the Homer's Odyssey and all these other books and put them together, and it won't match the length and width and depth of the Ramayana. It's that long.
Yeah.
It's a story. And the reason they made it into a story, because if you read it, you say, this is not possible. There's a monkey god, doesn't, there's a demon that has 10 heads that comes and captures Sita. What is all this about? So, because of its symbolism, I'm going to explain some of these things. So, let's talk first a little bit. It's such a long story that I can't go into all of it, but the father of Ram is a king by the name of Dashrath. Now, Dash means 10. 10, Rath means chariot, 10 chariots. Dashrath is his name. He is the king of this country. He has 3 wives, 3 queens. One is whatever their names are, not important, but each one of them had children. And then to one of them was born Ram, and then to another was born Bharat. Kaushalya was the one to Kaikai was the one to whom Bharat was born. And Lord Ram was one of the older sons. He was the son of Dashrath. And they all lived happily in the palace. Ram's wife was Sita. And when Dashrath was ready to retire, he said, my son Ram will be the next king. Kaikai had asked Dashrath for 2 boons, and he gave her his word that whatever you ask for will be yours. And she said to him the night before Ram was to be king, he says, I want to ask you for the 2 boons that you promised me. And Dashrath said, whatever you say, my word is my bond, you will have it. And she says, for my first boon, I want you to promise me that Ram and his wife will leave the palace and go to the forest for 14 years and stay there and not show their faces here. And Dashrath was crushed. He says, but why begged her not to do that? She said, no, you promised me, he's going to go. He went. She says, for the second boon, I want you to say that my son Bharat will be the king instead of Ram. So Ram went happily, says, listen, whatever my father and my mother want, I will do. And he left and he went barefooted to the jungles with his wife Sita and his younger brother Lakshman. So let's pause over here. What does this mean? So far, it's a story. And by the way, if you go to any Thai or Indonesian restaurant, you will see pictures of 2 men with crowns on their head and a woman between them. And the men have bows and arrows in their quiver. I don't know if you've seen this in any Thai restaurant or Indian restaurant or Indonesia, or maybe even some Chinese restaurants have it.
No, but I'm going to look now.
Yeah, and that's all Ram and Lakshman and Sita that they're designated. So Hinduism actually spread from India to Thailand, to China, to Indonesia, all of these various places. And even now, if you go to many Thai restaurants, they did switch ultimately to Buddhism, but even with their Buddhist leanings, they still pray to Ram and Lakshman and Sita. And they have like incense sticks that they stick over there and a little flame, just like they do in Indian temples. But that's Ram, Lakshman, and Sita. So what this means is that Dashrath means 10. This person, this king, was so renowned, so well versed that he was able to control his 10 senses. That's Dashrath. The three queens are the three gunas that we talked about in the Gita
Oh,
lectures.
yeah.
The three gunas are sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic gunas. That either your senses controlled by the three gunas and you have become a victim of your three gunas, or you control the gunas and you are in control. So essentially, in this, the king was in complete control of his three queens, and the gunas were listening to him, or one sense basically takes over and says, no, you've got to do something else. So that's what Kaikai did.
Just check me a little bit here. The 10 senses are the 5 sense organs and the 5 senses themselves.
Good point.
Yeah.
The 5 sense organs, which are hearing, sight, nose, taste, and skin, those are the sense organs which take stimuli into the body.
Right.
The 5 sense organs effectuate these demands for contact with the sense objects, and then you actually put them into action. So, go ahead.
So the basic struggle that we talk about in the Gita is about being able to control your senses and your sense organs, and
Yes.
the challenges to that and how to deal with them.
Yeah. So the 5 sense organs of action are the 5 the arms, that's 1, the legs, 2, ambulate, 3 is the voice box. You speak and you utter some things and you say something. That's an organ of action. The sexual organs, and then the organs of excretion. So these are the 5 organs that get us into trouble, especially the voice box, because you speak a lot, you say things that you don't mean to, and you hurt people, or your arms, or your legs, or your sexual organs. These are the ones. Now, when you control all 10, you're in complete control of all 10 senses.
Yes.
So Sita here represents us. So Ram represents the self, the universal consciousness. That Sita, when she's in the palace, everything is peaceful because she's devoted to Ram. She's devoted completely. Whatever she says, I'm peaceful, I'm happy, whatever Ram wants. Ram gets banished to the jungle. Ram goes willingly because that's how the Atman is, doesn't have wishes, desires, anything. But interestingly, Sita goes very happy because she says, as long as I'm with Ram, I don't care about anything. I can go barefoot, with no fancy clothes, no fancy hut. I'm staying here. I'm perfectly content. And she is content because she is attuned to her inner self, which is Ram. So they show how happy she is in the palace and how happy she is in the jungle with him. All the sorrows of man, as we learned in the Gita, are created by his obsession with the external world. That is the key that they're trying to get across here. That one should focus on one's inner self the way Sita focused on Ram, not the enchantment of the external world. And that keeps you ever peaceful and happy, as Sita is, whether she's in an extravagant palace or whether she's in the jungle.
Right.
Now comes the second part, which is how Sita diverts, moves away from her obsession with or fixation on Ram, the self, to external objects, which then leads to her unhappiness. How? Here's the story. One day, while they're in the hut with Ram, Lakshman, and Sita, Sita looks outside the hut, and in the jungle, she sees a fleeting golden deer. Beautiful. Gold. And it's just jumping from behind one tree to the next and somewhere else. And she says, look, did you see that? It just passed by like a chunk of gold. It's so beautiful. It's a deer, but it's golden. I want that.
A desire presents itself.
Desire presents itself in the form of something that is glittering, appealing, but also fleeting. Comes and goes, comes and goes.
Yeah.
So she says, I want that. Now, Lakshman and Ram are both Atman. They're the self, they're consciousness itself. And so Lakshman, her younger brother-in-law, says, dear sister-in-law, that's not a deer. That's really a rakshas, a demon. Don't pursue that because it'll only lead to trouble for you. And she
Mhm.
says, I don't care. I want it. And, the culture at that time was an older sister-in-law is like a mother. You obey, no questions. And Ram said, please listen to him. It's a Rakshas. You're not, no good is going to come of this. And she said, look, you have to promise me, get me that deer. So Ram said, okay, Lakshman, you stay here, protect my wife, protect your sister-in-law, stay with her. They were both warriors par excellence. Nobody could defeat them. So he says, you stay here and protect her. I'm going after the deer. So he goes. Now, the deer was really Ravan. Ravan is the 10-headed monster, Rakshas, that had his eye on this beautiful Sita. The 10-headed represents the 10 senses of
Mhm.
all mankind. So he kept going further and further into the jungle, and Ram kept going after him, after him. And ultimately, Ram took out his arrow and shot him because he knew this was a demon. This was not some ordinary thing. He needed to die anyway. And as he shot, this was not Ravan, it was one of his other Rakshasas. As the deer was dying, the Rakshas was dying, he yelled out using Ram's voice, he says, Lakshman, Sita. And Sita heard this and she said, oh, Ram has got injured. She said, Lakshman, go quick, hurry up, save him. And Lakshman says, I'm not leaving you.
Yeah.
Nothing can happen to Ram. Believe me, Ram is safe. He's perfectly okay. As we saw from the Gita, nothing ever happens to the Atman. It's forever there. But he said, I'm not going. And she said, you obey me. You leave. Go. And he said, okay, but promise me one thing. You're not going to go beyond this line. And he carved a line in there. And he left to go look for Ram. Instantly, Ravan came in the form of a Brahmin. A Brahmin you can never refuse. If he comes and asks you for food or begging, you have to, by almost cultural law, you have to give him what it is he's asking for, alms or food. So he comes, Ravan, and he says, give me food. And she says, I can't step beyond this line, but come and take it. She says, I'm not a dog. I'm a Brahmin. I'm not going to come like a dog and beg you. You have to come here, step over the line and give it to me. What risk is there? I'm a Brahmin. And she says, I can't really offend him. He's a Brahmin. Okay. So she disobeys, steps over the line, and instantly, as she steps over the line, he starts laughing and he shows his true self of Ravan and he grabs her and flies off to his home of Sri Lanka or Ceylon. That really represents, again, the beautiful fleeting golden deer in the jungle represents our desires that
Mhm.
are, constantly sense objects calling to us. Beauty, wealth, power, these things are fleeting. And when you do get them, you don't feel that you got the satisfaction.
Right.
And we've talked about this at length when we talked about the Gita, to say how no matter what you get from it, it's just these sense objects for the eyes, for the tongue, for the ears, for touch, and you become a slave to the 10-headed Rakshasas. You become
Right.
a slave to Ravan, just like Sita became a slave to Ravan and he captured her and flew away to Sri Lanka with her. The joys pass very quickly, is what this is symbolizing. So essentially, what it says is focus on the Atman, focus on the self, don't focus on these fleeting golden deers as they come across. Now, um, when he reaches Sri Lanka, and why Sri Lanka? Sri Lanka has many different reasons why Sri Lanka is because if you look at the map, it's a tear shaped island on the south coast of India. You actually have to go across from India by either boat or at that time there was like a stone bridge that the Ram and his monkey army created to go across. We talked about this when we were talking about Adam and Eve
Right.
at that time. So it was the richest country in the world, richer even than India, because it was full of diamonds and emeralds and sapphires. In there was his golden palace, Ravan's golden palace. And he said, come, Sita, come into my palace. And she said, absolutely not. I'm not going to come into your palace. I will stay right here in this little uh, woods that he has outside. Those woods were created by trees that are known as Ashoka trees. Ashoka trees, and therefore that little woods was called the Ashoka Van.
Mhm.
And she stayed away from Ravan and said, I will stay in these woods. I will not come near you physically. I will not indulge in the uh, luxuries that you have in your palace. And Ravan said, suit yourself. You want to stay in the woods. And then the story goes on and on and on. It's a long, long story.
Yeah.
But just to address this last part of it, the first part, it says, now that you made a mistake, Sita, by asking for that golden fleeting deer, you got into trouble because now you got captured as the slave to this 10-headed demon. But at least try and bring yourself back from there. And she says, you're right. I'm not going to indulge myself anymore. I'm
Mhm.
not going to go and stay in the forest. I'm going to stay in this Ashoka Van. Now, Shoka means grief. Ashoka means no grief.
Right.
Van means woods. So the woods where there is no grief, she stays there. Why? Because she has given up her attachment to luxury, and she says, I'm not going to indulge in my sense organs giving me demanding pleasure. I'm going to stay without any desires in this woods where I will have no grief because I'm not attached to the outside world, and I will focus my mind purely on getting back with Ram. So
She's
all she does all day is pray to Ram and focuses on her inner self. Sorry, Lou.
she's breaking her bonds with desire.
She's Once she broke her promise, she diverged away from Ram, and she focused on the thing. She got into trouble. Now she's able to go back, and that to us symbolizes that even though you may slip up once in a while,
Yeah.
you can still get back to it by focusing on your inner self instead. So she stayed away and from Ram, but then focused on it. And then the last part where um, his Ram's devotee is a monkey god. The monkey god is Hanuman. He's very strong. He flies and he comes into the Ashokavan, and he says, I've been sent here by Ram to save you, Sita. And Sita says, how do I know that? How can I trust you?
Yeah.
And he says, here's a ring given to me by your husband Ram. And she looks at the ring and she's so happy. She says, yes, this is proof to me that if Hanuman can come here, then the next thing will be that Ram will come here and I will be saved. And she's very confident. She says, my prayers are going to be answered.
Hmm.
That symbolizes again that when you do this, much as you may think, what is going to come of this, there will be signs to you that there is some benefit to this and good will come of it as time goes on. So that's what the ring symbol. And the monkey, very quickly, because I know we're running out of time,
Oh, we'll get
but the monkey in again is a symbol of thought, because our thoughts are like monkeys.
Yeah.
So many times thoughts are symbolized in Hindus' religion scriptures as either a monkey or a rat for different reasons. Monkeys, if you notice, are never sitting still. Monkeys either jump from one branch to the next, one tree to the next, or if they're sitting in a cage in a zoo, they're constantly fidgeting, constantly moving.
Yep.
So that is called asthir or chanchal. Sthir means steady, asthir means not steady, chanchal means fidgety. So these monkeys are constantly fidgeting, just like our thoughts. Our thoughts never stay on one topic. They're constantly jumping from one topic to another. And if you force it to stay on one topic, while it's there, it's fidgeting.
Yeah.
So that's why the
Because our
monkey god.
senses are throwing stimulus and desires at us all the time. So there's a
Correct.
constant barrage of that. So we're having to deal with all of it.
Yes, and that is why one of the reasons why rishis and munis, when they had to meditate, they said, they were just going to go up to the Himalayas and just block all temptations, all outside interference with, and so that the senses don't get visual stimulation, auditory stimulation, olfactory stimulation, or gustatory stimulation.
But developing the skill to be able to do that in your current environment is useful, and beyond, and you get stronger at that as you don't necessarily block out your senses. You just don't give them the attention and priority that that you normally would give them. But if you do it start to do it for small periods of time, you can do it for longer and longer. And your ritual of getting up early in the morning, that's another one of the ways that we try to deaden the amount of desires and the amount of stimulus we have.
Yes. And also, to add to that, Lou, you're absolutely right. But also, since we are human beings and not at the point where we are evolved to become self-realized, we still have to indulge our senses. So all that the Gita says is, look, we don't expect the mankind, all of human population, to be able to become self-realized. So while you're indulging your senses, which we recommend you do, says the scriptures, while you're indulging them, keep the self, the Atman, God, uppermost in your mind.
Yeah.
And don't linger on it. Don't keep saying, oh my God, this was so good. This food was so delicious, because it'll only stimulate you to do more.
Well, we talked about this in the Gita podcast, where deprivation doesn't work because you can't sustain it, but it's about not becoming attached to things, right?
That's right. And not
Attachment
to
is the key
become
word.
attached to it, and not to linger on it after you've indulged yourself in whatever pleasure you want to indulge yourself in.
Yep. Yeah,
So friends,
and again, go back and watch the Gita podcast. It'll be worth your while. It'll change things for you. It absolutely will.
yeah, and if you want to write to me, any questions, comments, anything, write to me at arisearjuna@gmail.com. And Facebook has, Lou has put up this email address if you want to go to Facebook or YouTube, right? Is this on YouTube too?
Yes. Yeah.
So you can go to either YouTube or Facebook to see it in writing over here. arisearjuna@gmail.com.
You can write about the Ancient Stories podcast or the Gita podcast, or whatever you have. And again, I would go on Facebook, Arise Arjuna, and look for that. And again, it'll be well worth your time. I heartily recommend it.
Thank you, Lou. Thank you so much for watching, friends, and we'll see you next time.